Hello, my name is Michael Portas, Superintendent of Schools for the Pequannock Township School District. I'm joined today by our principal at PV, Mr. John Seborowski, and our topic today is to talk about the updated PV schedule that we're looking to roll out for the upcoming school year. And very excited to talk about this topic. We had a parent university last week in which we discussed the matter. Apparently the audio didn't work terribly well for the PV portion, which makes this podcast a little bit more urgent and important. And I'm really excited to be able to speak about this with Mr. Seborowski, who's really spearheaded the efforts from PV to update the schedule. Mr. Seborowski, if you want to say any quick introduction, and then we'll jump into the matter at hand.
Yeah, no, listen, I had so much fun doing that first podcast with you, Dr. Portas. I jumped at the opportunity to do another one, so I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, much appreciated. And this is our first time using Zoom as a medium for podcasting. In full disclosure, I've never once recorded a Zoom meeting, so I'm not exactly sure where this is going to end up, but I know the IT team will be able to undo anything that I do. So we're going to share the screen so that you can see a snapshot of what the new schedule looks like. It has a little bit of a narrative down the side of it, but more or less, we want to guide students and families as well as staff through the updated changes and give some talking points that if you do want to know more about, you can always reach out to Mr. Seborowski. You can reach out to me as well, but I'll probably refer you to him. And hopefully it's something that works brilliantly next year. And as I said before, we're very excited about it. So I'm going to share my screen right now and hopefully it works. Well, that worked. So first off, my question to you, Mr. Seborowski, is can you talk to us about the process that you've gone through with your staff to generate the schedule that we have on the screen right now?
Yeah, definitely. And it started, we've been really working on this for the better part of a year and a half now. And it actually started with more of a focus on the school start time. And a group of stakeholders, we had board members, administrators, teachers, parents, all meet. I believe we met twice, and we were talking about the school start time. And 7:50 didn't really seem to be anything of concern for anyone. It seemed like a fine start time by all accounts. But the thing that came from those discussions, though, was, let's talk a little bit more about the schedule. Are we maximizing our minutes throughout the course of the day? So that committee really, although it was school start time, that really wasn't a concern for PV. It was more so the actual physical schedule itself. So that's where those conversations started. And I mean, there were several different, there were PD sessions where we met with staff. We had a committee here at PV where we met after school a couple of times. And, a lot of that conversation that stemmed from those first two meetings we had with parents and other groups, we took, kind of what did we see around the county? What are we seeing in Morris County middle schools? What are we seeing in surrounding middle schools? And the minutes during each period seemed to go anywhere between 42 to somewhere in the mid 50s, as high as 80, but somewhere in the mid 50s. That was the general range, and we're at 60 now. So we thought, again, in talking with different groups, 60 maybe is a little bit too long. So, in doing that and going through a few other things, taking other recommendations, this was the schedule that you see on the screen. This is the one that we seemed to like and to fit the needs we were looking to address.
Yep. Yeah. And just from my end, I was pretty excited when you and your committee started really delving into looking at schedule revisions, because change isn't something that really excites people all that much. It's a heavy lift, and there's an awful lot that goes into it. So the fact that you had a lot of people on board, and they were from, as you addressed, myriad stakeholder groups as well, I think really provided greater ownership and honestly a lot more creativity in this process as well. I'm impressed with the outcome. I know we've put it through quite a few revisions and agonized over the most minute details, but that's part of the process for developing something that we feel will better meet the educational needs of our students as well as our staff. All right, so my first question to you is, what are you most excited about in this new schedule?
I think three. Then it's funny because we've been talking about it for a better part of a year and a half now. So I feel like we've talked about so many different aspects of this. But I think the three things that I'm looking at and very much excited to see in action is first I want to see how the students and staff respond to the shortened periods. You
Mhm.
know, yeah, as I just shared a couple minutes ago, 60 for an eighth grade student, for example, to sit essentially 5 straight times for 60 minutes before lunch, that's a long time. So I think this 49 minutes, this affords us an opportunity to kind of reset after 49 minutes, move to your next class and get going for another 49. So I'm excited to see that in action. The second thing is going to be our period 5. And on the screen, if you see our period 5 class, we're calling that the Panther period. And that is actually 44 minutes. Okay, so the periods, all the periods of the day are 49. Lunch is 35, and the Panther period, period 5, that's for all students here at PV, and that's 44 minutes. And what that essentially is going to look like, we have 5 days out of the week. So 4 days out of the week, the student will be meeting with their core teacher and class. So you'll meet English one day, social studies, science, and math. And the fifth day will help us meet and get into phys ed a little bit more, make our phys ed and health requirement. And the goal of that is really to serve as a reinforcement block where teachers can work with their students, work with their classes on areas that they feel they need to spend a little bit more time on. And we do have a vision for that, kind of almost maybe a 5-year plan, if you will. We did visit a local middle school who does this and has been doing it for a number of years. And they're at a point where there's electives tied into it. There's more student choice in there. But when they started, it was pretty much what we're doing next year. We want to start with a structured a period as possible, kind of go through the additions, the subtractions through that, and actually live the schedule. Because it's one thing to, in theory, talk about things. It's another to actually live it, take those experiences, and then see how we can build upon that each year. The third thing that I am excited about, and it might seem a little bit underrated, is the homeroom period. If you look at the start of the day, 7:50 to 7:55 is homeroom. We don't have a homeroom. I've been here 10 years. But we've never had a homeroom here. And although it's only 5 minutes, I do think that we'd like to see some of our tardiness get addressed through that. But really, it's an underrated way of I think we have good school spirit here. I think we can maybe be a little better. Okay. And I think that affords us an opportunity to do some community building things with each other. I envision something like maybe Thanksgiving time, every homeroom is assigned to collect and bring in a Thanksgiving dinner, let's say for family in need. It's Wear Green Day. How many homerooms? If your homeroom has 90% participation, maybe you get a free period 5 or something like that. Just to try to build a little healthy competition in the building. We used to do things like door decorating, things like that, and things like that. It helps to improve and build on certain things in the building, and it's just something that I'd like for us to get back to. And I think having an organized, dedicated homeroom period allows us to do some of those things.
Yeah, that's great. And you might be the first person in history to be excited about homeroom, but I give you credit. You make a very convincing argument for it. But I definitely see the multi-layered purpose behind that it's not just to provide a cushion to address tardiness. There's a lot more to it. And I did admittedly push back a little bit against the homeroom. I still think tardiness is a habit more so than it is a consequence of actual time. But I do think you're going to prove me wrong because you have so many ideas about how we can gain value out of this time of bringing the kids together, bringing them in from the chaos of outside, something structured inside, and now we're going to start the day purposefully. And just two other quick things, just from my lens, I really like what you were talking about, that Panther period, and it sounds like you have you do have a long range vision for that, which I think is really exciting. And it's important to note that we do have to make sure that we meet the PE/health class requirement. The state has a requirement that you have to have an average of 150 minutes per week. It is the only content area for which there is such an average, and we definitely want to make sure we comply with that. But I think that we can do some pretty creative things under the umbrella of health, whether it's addressing mental health, online safety, which is a critical component of mental health. There are a lot of things we can do there. And we can also look to use that time for assemblies or class meetings. So instead of pulling the kids out of their dedicated academic blocks, we can use that time really well. And I think that's great. And I really like how you're going to start with that structured approach for the Panther period. and then look to branch out into greater student choice. And I think that that's something that's going to benefit our kids. It's just going to take a little while to get there.
Right. Right.
All right, my third question starts out with a statement. Making changes is a nervous-making business, which we've certainly been through that. What makes you at least a little bit nervous about the new schedule?
Well, sometimes people don't like to admit if they're nervous about something, but I've always been of the mindset if you feel nervous about something and you admit you're nervous about it, it shows that you care.
Yep.
And I most certainly care about Pequannock Valley School. I care about the whole district and every student in the district. And yeah, it's, we've had this schedule in place for a number of years, quite a long time, and people get used to certain things, habits, and that's good. But again, I think it's time for a change for a lot of the reasons we've been discussing. And if we succeed or fail, I don't think we're going to fail, but if succeed or fail, I have no doubt that we have come up with what we think is what's best for kids, and that's what makes me not as nervous, because I do feel that at the end of the day, I'm sure that through some through experience, through reflection, we'll come up with better ways to do things as we live the schedule, some possible minor additions and subtractions. But it will always be about doing our best, really, to put our students on a path that provides the best opportunity to pursue success, while always doing our best to support our staff throughout the process. And that's really what makes me, I guess, a little less nervous, because I do know that we're all working towards that goal.
And that's a great point, because anytime you implement any type of change, something's going to go well that you didn't really anticipate going well, and something's going to be a mess that you didn't anticipate was going to be messy. And if you have the right organizational culture in place, you can sustain whatever hiccups you might face. And we don't know what we don't know. So yeah, there are going to be things that we're going to figure out through September and October and realize, oh, we probably need to adjust this or address this. And we will. And I feel like you have an open enough relationship with the greater school community, which includes students, staff, families, me. So there's a lot that the board, there's a lot that we can do there. And something about the minutes for the class time too is we've had a lot of conversations, especially in the COVID response as well as post-COVID response, of what we're seeing with student behaviors. And we hear a lot about how every middle school has been struggling more with student behaviors. And that brings small consolation, because if other people are struggling and you're struggling, okay, but you're still struggling. So I'm not saying we're struggling with student behavior, but there have been more things to address. And I do like the fact that we're focusing on keeping kids more engaged, which is going to generally improve discipline and comportment, because an engaged student rarely acts out. And when you have fewer of those issues, you do see gains in academic growth and purposefulness, and even in teacher morale as well. So I think there are a lot of things connected here. And I hope I don't sound like a hypocrite, because we're making the classes longer at the high school and shortening them here. But for that age group, it's a different ball of wax. So 56 minutes for a high school kid, it's actually a really good fit. And less than that for a middle school student, also a really good fit. And finally, my fourth and final and by far most difficult question: how are we going to know that our changes are successful? What's going to define that?
It's definitely some of this is going to absolutely come down to looking at that, is there measurable student growth, okay, and achievement, and that will come after a year or two of collecting NJSLA scores, of local benchmarking, looking at grade distribution, marking period grades, things like that. So it will take us a year or two to really kind of put some of that together. For the time being, over the course of the next year, when we really get into it, you're talking about, possible surveys, maybe halfway through the year, the end of the year, to our students, to our staff, to our parents. I know that our parents don't live the actual schedule. They hear things when their kids come home, but we want to know what they think, what they're hearing. Some of it is a bit anecdotal. I said earlier that we run the gamut in the county of 42 minutes to the mid 50s or so. 60, just it feels a little too long for us right now. I've been here for a number of years. A lot of our staff has been here a number of years. we just feel like it's time for a little bit of a change. So I think there'll also be a certain feel to it as well. Obviously, we'll have our data points that we'll use and refer to. Just takes a little while to collect meaningful data. In the short term, though, I think it's that, having conversations with people, doing check-ins, doing class meetings. Ms. Ringen and I do class meetings 3 or 4 times a year. What a wonderful chance to check in and maybe just, give a quick little 2-question, survey to the kids. How's the schedule treating you so far? Is there anything you'd like to see us maybe work on a little bit? So those are ways I think we can see how successful the schedule is.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you specifically used the word data too, because we can have quantitative data, and that's what we're most familiar with addressing, and that's numerical. There's also qualitative data, and that's when you said anecdotal, that's what a lot of it is. So if it's a hallway conversation with a kid saying, "Hey, I really love this new schedule this year," that's data that you can apply, because that's an endorsement of something. And if somebody brings to you a concern they have or something that they'd like to see addressed more, you've got that. And I know we certainly don't want to incur survey fatigue on our students or the staff or the families, but I think it is going to be important, as you were saying, to have a couple check-in points to really find out how are things going. And sometimes you get really excited about something, 2 months in, hey, this is the best thing ever, and then you realize, maybe not so much. So I like having that early check-in point and later. And I really do think you're going to have a very positive feedback. Otherwise, we wouldn't be implementing this. And I appreciate that you have the open-mindedness to listen to whatever input you're getting. And I know you will, and your committee will hear it, and you guys will keep looking for ways to tweak, adjust, and improve.
Yeah, and I guess, one last thing to note too, to your point just a second ago, this isn't a John Seborowski schedule. I have helped to organize it. I'm fully endorsing it. I'm supporting it 100%. But there are many components here in this schedule that have come from other people involved in the process, whether it's through those school start time meetings that we had, to our teacher meetings. There's a lot in that schedule that I was not necessarily thinking of right away, or even necessarily wanted right away. But through compelling, arguments and discussions and showing me research, I really do think it's been a true collaborative experience over the last 18 or so months. And that's, again, so I guess that's another thing that excites me too. A lot of us have really put a lot of time and energy into this, and I want to see how it plays out.
I 100% agree. Yeah, you want a lot of fingerprints on the finished product. And I think that that's important because you get greater ownership there as well. Yeah, and you could very easily have drafted something that you thought was best and just told everybody, this is it, you gotta make it work. I mean, I could have done the same, but we've seen how those types of top-down initiatives work, and it's generally not terribly well. So
Right.
I agree with you, and I love the fact that your committee addressed all of my questions, because throughout the process, sometimes I was intentionally challenging, sometimes I was just curious, but I really felt like they were able to respond to everything, and you represented a lot of that too. So I'm excited for it. Hopefully our staff and students and families are excited as well. And I do mean it sincerely as well, that if anybody does need further clarification or wants to bring things up, reach out to either of us, and we'll certainly make sure that we look into it, because it's a learning process, and we are not only educators, but we're also in the process of constantly being educated. So let's keep
Right.
that moving forward. Anything else there, Mr. Seborowski?
No, just I wish everyone, I don't know when people are going to be watching this, but I wish everyone a successful end to this school year. And I'm already excited and thinking about next school year.
Yep, I love that approach. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Seborowski, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. I'm going to stop the recording right now, and we'll see you next time.